Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking the time and joining us this evening for this webinar about KiwiSaver and why acting now matters. Not because of big dramatic changes, but because you've got choices, contributions, fund type, and we're also going to talk about compounding over time. Small decisions in each of these areas made today can significantly change your retirement outcome. So just a bit of history of KiwiSaver. There has been many changes since KiwiSaver was introduced in 2007. But I suppose the most relevant changes came last year, where employee and employer contributions are gradually going to increase over the next few years. Government tax credit has been reduced, and 16 and 17-year-olds are now going to be eligible for the government contribution. If you want more information on how these changes are going to impact your financial future, I do recommend, reaching out to an advisor, have a chat and, fully understand what these changes mean for you over the long term. So what is KiwiSaver? KiwiSaver is a collaborative model. It's contributions from you, it's contributions from your employer, and it's contributions from the government. So you choose how much you contribute. You might be self-employed making voluntary contributions. If you're an employee, you can choose to contribute 3, 4, 6, 8, or even 10% of your income. You choose how your money is invested. There's a diverse range of KiwiSaver providers and fund types to choose from. The power is yours to choose a provider and fund type that matches your goals. You can review and change KiwiSaver over time. Your life is going to change dramatically over 5, 10, 15 years. So, periodic reviews of your KiwiSaver are really important. So now we're just going to get into a Slido. You're going to need to get your phones and scan the QR code. So we're going to have some questions throughout the webinar. And once you scan this QR code, Slido should come up on your phone, which will allow you to answer the questions throughout the webinar. So, true or false? KiwiSaver is basically set and forget scheme, with very little that you can change. We're having some answers here. I suppose I've answered the question already in the previous slide. This is false. KiwiSaver provides a huge amount of flexibility. Most people just don't realize how much power and control they have over KiwiSaver. So that's what today is all about. So, 78% false, 22% true. So now, understanding your power, choices, contributions, and compounding. The right fund choice matters. Selecting the right fund choice early, you can have significant long-term outcomes. Contributions build momentum. Even small, regular contributions over a long period of time can add up to be a lot later in life throughout retirement. Compounding does the heavy lifting. Compounding returns over a long period of time are really going to stack up over the long time for your financial future. So, Question, pop quiz. How many millions of dollars in KiwiSaver government contributions were unclaimed last year? 1 to 5 million, 10 to 50 million, 50 to 100 million, or 400 to 500 million? Oh, we've got a bit of a race here. 50 to 100 million's coming out on top. No one's in the camp of 1 to 5 million. Oh, it's quite an even spread here. 50-50 on 50 to 100 million. So the correct answer is 400 to 500 million. That's the quantity and scale of people not contributing to KiwiSaver, and the significant number that people missed out on from government contributions last year. So KiwiSaver is now over 140 billion, and over my lifetime, it's projected that it's going to reach over $1 trillion. So $1 trillion for Kiwis' retirement, this is the scale that KiwiSaver will get to over time. So the time is now. Act earlier rather than later. So the importance of the right fund choice. Use time to your advantage. Lots of Kiwis, we invest in property, and over time they'll pay down their mortgage. But another crucial pillar to our retirement is going to be KiwiSaver. It's just going to get bigger and bigger over time. So use that time to your advantage. Take action earlier rather than later. Younger people from 18 to 45 have time on their side to make good decisions that are going to impact their financial future. Match your fund type to your investment time frame. If you're saving for your first home and it's a couple of years away, you might want certainty that your KiwiSaver fund is going to maintain value. If you've got 20, 30 years on your side, you might want to invest in a growth fund, to allow compounding to work for you over the long term. Review, don't react. When markets are going to go up and down, be patient. Review your KiwiSaver. Choose something that you can stick with, when markets go up and down. So these choices are important, and over the long time are extremely powerful. Effects of contributions. Every dollar counts. Start early, you're going to grow more. Every dollar that you contribute, and the sooner you begin contributing, the more time, money and compounding has to work for you. Small steps add up. Even small, modest contributions add up over your lifetime. Increase your contributions when possible. Your kids may move out. Your disposable income goes up. You might get a new job. Your income goes up. When your financial situation changes, if you have the capacity, increase your contributions. Then let compounding do the rest over time. So the power of compounding, the magic of time. Compounding means growth on growth. Your returns earn returns, earn returns. It's a snowball effect, growing and growing over the long term. Time is your best friend. The longer you stay invested, the more powerful compounding becomes. Patience pays off. Compounding rewards those who stay invested in market downs and ups. Why starting early matters. Starting earlier, you're strong. The earlier you start, it creates a stronger foundation for later in life. Less pressure, Time does the compounding for you. So the earlier you start, the more time you've got for compounding. Flexibility through market ups and downs, you know. Beginning early gives you room to adjust your KiwiSaver strategy to ride out market ups and downs. So before we get into the next question, if anyone has any questions, pop them in the Q&A and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. So no question is a dumb question. There's lots to understand about KiwiSaver, and the more information that we can give you, the better. So if you're a parent and you invested $1,000 for your children for every birthday from the age 1 through to 18, let's say in an aggressive fund, what might the balance be when they turn 18? We're sort of using long-term averages. So we've got some smart people out there. There must be some people in the audience who understand compounding. So if we've contributed $18,000 over 18 years, compounding has grown, your child's KiwiSaver to be 28,000 at the age of 18. The average KiwiSaver balance in New Zealand is 38,000. Imagine if you've given your children a $28,000 leg up before other people have even started. So compounding returns could be $20 a week, $1,000 a year. It all adds up. So achieving financial security, shortly we're going to go through a KiwiSaver tool and compare scenarios and actually visualize what, your decisions and how much power they have over the long term. Yeah. Yeah, with me team. Yeah, don't know. It's coming up screen. KiwiSaver calculator. Yeah. So if we have an 18-year-old, two 18-year-olds, but one is starting from zero, the other is starting from 28,000. Let's say they go into the workforce, they start on a salary of 60,000, they both contribute 3% and their employer contributes 3%. They're invested in a balanced fund. Well, what impacts does that 28,000 have over the long term? Just by starting, having a kickstart at age 18, same fund, same contributions, over the long term, assuming that they don't use the KiwiSaver for their first home, it's just to showcase the compounding returns that 28,000 can have. The difference is substantial. $288,000 just from a couple of parents contributing $8,000 into their children's KiwiSaver account till the age of 18. Now, what if the 18-year-old with $28,000, their parents said, you need to speak with an advisor? And, most people consider default fund, which is a balanced fund. But now their advisor says, you're young, you've got the capacity to be in a growth fund. What does that look like? Now we've had a leg up, 28,000, investing in a growth fund over time, comparing that to balanced, starting from zero at the age of 18. So by having a small head start and choosing the right fund choice, the difference jumps to $732,000. That's a huge amount of wealth at the retirement, and the difference is significant. Now, contributions. What if, the 18-year-old started contributing at 5% instead of the minimum of 3%, investing in a growth fund? But they start with 28,000. It's forecasted if they stayed in a growth fund their entire life, they'd have over $2 million in their KiwiSaver at retirement. So it's time and compounding, and these decisions are really, really important for long-term investing. Now, let's take someone more average, because using an 18-year-old, the compounding has a big effect. Let's say they have an average KiwiSaver balance. So they both have 38,000. Let's say they've increased their income to 70,000. And one stays in a default fund their entire life. The other invests in maybe an aggressive fund because they've spoken to an advisor and maybe they've got a high tolerance for risk. Contributing 5%, what is this going to look like? So same 35-year-old, investing in an aggressive fund, contributing more. The difference over 30 years can be 400,000. That equates to 23,000 additional spending every year, assuming that they live to age 90. And the model assumes that you get a 4% return out of your KiwiSaver after the age 65. So it just showcases, no matter where you're at, what stage of life you're in, these decisions are really, really important. Working with an advisor, they can provide you with this information. We've got access to tools and resources to help visualize, the impacts of these decisions. So avoiding pitfalls, common mistakes and myths, myth, KiwiSaver's inflexible, it's sitting there in the background. The truth is the flexibility is yours. It's time that you take action, make an informed decision on each of these areas. Not reviewing your fund type, Staying in a default fund may not have a huge impact over the next 12 or 24 months, but over the long term, it can have a significant impact. Under contributing. If you're not contributing, you're not receiving the government contribution. You're not receiving your employer contributions. So make sure you know how much you're contributing and the benefit it has from that collaborative model. Reacting emotionally to markets, switching after markets fall, making emotional decisions, can have a negative impact over the long term. None of these decisions are dramatic mistakes. They're all small decisions, that do add up over the long term. So your next step, if you have any questions, wherever you are in New Zealand, we have an advisor near you. We've got 15 KiwiSaver and 6 investment advisors around the country. We work with a broad range of providers. Our nationwide team of advisors, support and service over 75,000 New Zealanders with their finances, including 5,000 clients with KiwiSaver and investments. What's in it for you? Working with an advisor is extremely beneficial. We touch base periodically in the future. We help you remain calm, through the storms. We also know that people that do engage with an advisor really rate the experience that they have with an advisor. 9.28 out of 10 for our NPS survey is extremely high. So it just shows you that working with an advisor is beneficial and enjoyable. So the next steps and where to get advice, to make the most out of KiwiSaver, start by speaking with an advisor. You can have a no obligation chat. You're not going to have to do anything, but the more information that you can use for your future self, the better. Advisors help educate you. They help guide you. We have access to tools and information that the general public don't have access to. An example is a truck driver from Waitomo Caves. His KiwiSaver balance got to 50,000, and that's a significant amount. He sought out advice to see how he could grow his KiwiSaver, for the rest of his working life, so he could maximize his returns for retirement. So after this webinar and presentation, how confident are you that your KiwiSaver will help you live the retirement that you want? What do you think your retirement looks like? Is KiwiSaver going to help you? 1, sort of not confident. 5, being very confident. So the key message today is simple. KiwiSaver is not something that just happens to you. It's something that you can actively take control of. Small decisions made consistently over time can have a meaningful impact on your future. If there's one takeaway from today, it's reviewing where you are and where you should be moving forward can make a real difference over the long term. So thank you for your time today and being a part of this session. And I hope you've gained some valuable insight. We'll leave you with one final question. Do you think that speaking to an advisor is going to benefit you? So contact us. If you scan the QR code on the screen, it'll take you to the Apex contact page. You can put in your details, and what it will lead to is a no obligation chat with an advisor. If you have any questions related to KiwiSaver, compounding returns, fund types, providers, put your questions into the Q&A. So any questions, the more questions, the merrier. Bear with me, I'm just getting it up. So do we work with all KiwiSaver providers? At Apex, we work with a broad range of providers, but we also have an investment committee that review sort of performance, quality of service, fund options. And so we do choose a select amount of KiwiSaver providers that are suitable to our clients, around preferences around how they invest. Do they want socially responsible options? Do they want more passive options? Do they want active options? Do they want a high quality service? How do you get in contact with an Apex advisor? So just scan the QR code, put your details in, we'll be in contact. You don't have to, you just might want some questions around, the changes to KiwiSaver over the coming years. An advisor can help you understand that. Does it cost to see an advisor? Your first meeting, it's completely no obligation. It's just there so you can get to understand an advisor and the information that they can provide to you. Most providers, we work with, there's no additional fees to working with an advisor. Some specialist advisors, there might be an additional fee, but that'll be disclosed to you, prior before you, work with an advisor long term. Can you be in multiple different funds, split between funds, e.g. aggressive and another? Where could this be helpful? So you can only invest with one KiwiSaver provider, but within that KiwiSaver provider, you can actually choose multiple funds. So you might choose to invest 50% growth, 50% aggressive. In some cases, this could be beneficial to get diversification between fund managers of the aggressive and growth fund. Other providers, you might just want to choose one risk profile and run with it over the long term. How much do I need to have in my KiwiSaver at 65? Well, the more, the merrier, because the more you can grow your KiwiSaver and the more you have at retirement, it gives you more flexibility. The more you have, you can take funds out, use that for travel, family, disposable income, for your retirement. So there's no right or wrong answer. But I suppose the biggest point is making good decisions now is going to impact how much you're going to have down the line at retirement. So 67% of people said they weren't confident that their KiwiSaver is going to be enough for their retirement. Just speak with an advisor, taking action, being well informed, getting good guidance, having a long-term relationship is going to be in your best interest. So, reach out to an advisor, have a quick 30-minute meeting. What's the worst that can happen? You walk away being more informed. So many New Zealanders are in the same position as you, and it's never too late to speak with an advisor. So any questions, any queries, we're here to help. Sure. What is the youngest age someone can sign up to KiwiSaver? So I have parents signing up their children, less than 1 year old. They just have to have an IRD number and birth certificate. So, lots of parents do sign up their kids early, um, and you as the parent will then choose the provider and the fund type. So there's no real minimum age to join, but you do need an IRD number for the KiwiSaver provider. Any more questions? Any more questions? Going once, going twice. One last question. Many people default to a bank provider, and effectively what they're doing is choosing their bank to be their investment specialist. So there's a wide range of options out there, and reviewing where you are now and if the bank is suitable for you, could be suitable, may not be suitable. There's many decisions and providers to choose from. Children don't get the government contribution until the age of 16. So the changes announced last year, previously you would only get government contributions from the age of 18. So now the government has actually brought that down to 16-year-olds. So anyone below the age of 16 won't be eligible for the government contributions. But you can contribute and make voluntary contributions to your children's account. So might be $10 a week. Remember, every dollar counts. $520 a year times 18 years. You're contributing to your children's financial future. What do the contribution changes mean that are coming up soon? So from the 1st of April, if you're enrolled in KiwiSaver and contributing 3%, you'll automatically be contributing more, and your employee rate will go up to 3.5%, matched by your employer at 3.5%. Then from the April 2028, that's going to go up to 4% and 4%. There is an option to opt out and maintain your 3% contributions. But if you don't opt out, this will automatically increase over time. I've got everything. I think that's it. Is any more questions? Going once, going twice? Sold to the highest bidder. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this evening. I hope you've found this informative. You know, one last, shot, sign the QR code, put in your contact details, and an advisor will be in contact to discuss KiwiSaver with you. Enjoy the rest of your summer and take care. Cheers.